I knew my wife was hiding a huge secret, so I played dumb. But then for some reason, she proudly confessed to it herself. My wife and I had been married for 5 years, and at our anniversary dinner, I mentioned how I'd always wanted to learn woodworking like my grandfather, but never had the space or tools. I even joked that I was jealous of guys who could build furniture for their homes while I struggled to assemble IKEA pieces. Well, a few weeks ago, my wife started having book club every Saturday morning, but she never brought any books home, and she always came back with sawdust in her hair. I was a little suspicious, but pushed it to the back of my mind. But then she out of nowhere said that book club was extending to 3 hours instead of 2. She said it's because they were reading longer novels, and stressed to me that she'd have her phone on silent during discussions. I dubiously agreed, and although I wanted to ask which books they were reading, I trusted her and respected her privacy. But a few Saturdays later, during one of her book club sessions, she accidentally butt-dialed me. I answered expecting to hear women discussing literature. Instead, I heard power tools and someone saying, "Keep your fingers away from the blade, Sarah." I stayed on the line a bit longer, and that's when I heard an instructor say, "Great job on that dovetail joint." That's when I realized that the reason she was sneaking out wasn't for book club. She was secretly taking woodworking classes, probably to surprise me. My heart absolutely melted realizing what she was doing. She's always been nervous around power tools. She made me promise to handle all the drilling when we moved in, and the thought of her learning woodworking for me made me want to hug her immediately. I hung up with a grin on my face like I was a little kid who just found out about a surprise party, and I just sat back so happy. However, the only problem was that my wife is awful at keeping secrets. She cannot do it to save her life, and I knew she would tell me soon. I myself said nothing, and all it took was a few more days until she mentioned that book club was really opening her mind to new things. My ears perked up and I acted interested, asking what they were reading. I could tell she was struggling so hard not to tell me, so I let it go for the time being. However, before I knew it, she was coming to me multiple times per day, solely to tell me that she had something special planned for my birthday next month. I kept urging her not to tell me because it would be ruined, but then one day after dinner, she decided she just couldn't keep it in anymore. She grabbed my hand and led me to the garage, which she'd been keeping locked. "I've been learning woodworking to make something for you," she said shyly, pulling off a tarp. I of course knew this, but it was still the most touching thing I had ever seen in my life. Underneath was a beautiful half-finished bookshelf made from oak. So much so, I almost got choked up as I ran my hands over the smooth wood. She was clearly still learning, but she genuinely built this herself. The joints were tight, the shelves were level, and she'd even started carving a small design on the sides. She told me that she'd been terrified I'd find out because wood shavings kept getting tracked into the house, but since I usually watch TV in the evening, she'd sweep them up quickly. She also said her instructor suggested I might want to join the class so we could build things together. I excitedly said yes, and we made a little date out of it. That week, we went to the workshop together, and even though she pretended to be showing me around for the first time, all the other students greeted her warmly and told me what a natural she'd become with the router.